Have you ever noticed that she never calls or texts you first? And no matter how much you wait, it's always you who has to make the first move. What seems like a small detail hides a much deeper truth, a psychological pattern most men never see until it's too late. You wait for her to initiate, but silence lingers. You step in to fill the gap, believing your effort will spark her respect. Yet the more you give, the less she values. This is where men lose their balance, not because they lack love, but because they mistake persistence for strength. They think consistency proves loyalty, but in her eyes, it only exposes desperation. That's the secret no one tells you. When you reward her silence, you don't hold her closer. You teach her to drift further away. If this message already stirs something in you, hit like so it reaches other men walking the same path. Subscribe to Stoic Station, your home for strength, stillness, and self-mastery. And in the comments, drop a 1 if you've ever chased too much, or a 2 if you've learned the cost of silence the hard way. Start this journey now. Because sometimes the loudest truth is not what you say, but what you stop giving. And that is where our first step begins. 1. Stop rewarding her silence. If she never calls or texts you first, the very first thing you must do is stop rewarding her silence. This is where so many men lose themselves without realizing it. They believe persistence proves loyalty, when in reality, it exposes desperation. You tell yourself you're showing effort, that you're proving your care, but what she sees is a man who doesn't know how to stop giving to someone who gives nothing in return. And that is not love, it is self-abandonment. Think about it. You send 3 texts in a row and the screen stays cold. You call and it rings without an answer. Hours later, you tell yourself she must be busy, so you send 1 more message just to check in. And with every unanswered attempt, something inside you shrinks. The weight doesn't hit you all at once. It comes quietly, each silence carving away a piece of your dignity. And what happens in her mind? She doesn't admire you for caring. She questions your value. If you're always available, no matter how much she ignores you, the thought creeps in. Maybe no one else values him either. Maybe he has no other options. Maybe I don't need to respect him. This is the cruel paradox. You pour more effort hoping to gain respect, yet every drop you give makes her respect fade faster. That's the knife you feel twisting in your chest. You start to feel invisible, small, unwanted. Your words lose their weight. Your presence becomes ordinary. And yet, you keep going, hoping that 1 more call, 1 more text, 1 more display of effort will somehow change the story. But the truth is, the more you try to fill her silence, the louder it becomes. The answer is not to keep pushing, it is to stop rewarding her silence. Step back. Let her feel the void that your presence once filled so effortlessly. Send the message without typing a single word. My time and attention are not free for those who don't value them. That is not arrogance, it is self-respect. And this is where the dynamic shifts. When you stop chasing, you create the space where she must confront the reality of your absence. Because here is the irony. Your silence begins to speak louder than all the dozens of messages you once sent. Suddenly, what she once took for granted now feels uncertain. The texts she used to ignore become the texts she notices are missing. The calls she used to decline become the calls she realizes aren't coming anymore. It is not punishment, it is clarity. It is the recognition that respect cannot grow in a one-sided chase. So here is your first step back to power. For the next 7 days, refuse to send the first text if she doesn't initiate. Each time you feel the urge to reach out, write it down instead of acting on it. Watch the pattern unfold in front of you. Notice how much control you've been giving away without a second thought. That awareness is the beginning of your strength, and when you reclaim it, you stop being the man who waits in silence, and you start being the man whose silence commands attention. Second match. Her energy. The most powerful move you can make in a relationship isn't to push harder, it's to find balance. Many men destroy their own chances because they don't understand this. She gives 20% and you rush to fill in the other 80%. She sends one short, half-hearted text and you reply with a paragraph, hoping that the sheer volume of words will spark her interest. But every time you overcompensate, you're teaching her a dangerous lesson, that she never has to meet you halfway, because you'll always do the work for her. Think of it like a dance. If you keep stepping forward while she stands still, it doesn't look like devotion. It looks like desperation. The music may still play, but the rhythm is broken, and instead of two people moving together, it's just you spinning in circles, carrying all the weight, exhausting yourself while she watches. That imbalance kills attraction faster than almost anything else, because when one person does all the giving, the other has no reason to give at all. And here's the brutal truth. Comfort breeds contempt. The more she sees you taking on everything, the more she grows used to it. She stops appreciating your effort because it's expected. She doesn't have to lift a finger to keep you around. And deep down, you know it's unfair, but you continue anyway, hoping that one day she'll notice, that one day she'll reward your persistence. Instead, she grows colder. She doesn't feel the need to contribute because you've already proven you'll never let the connection collapse, no matter how little she gives. That's why you must learn to match her energy. If she texts, you text. If she calls, you call. If she makes time for you, you make time for her. But if she chooses silence, you don't force communication just to fill the void. You let silence stand. This is not about being cold, and it's not about playing games. It's about balance. It's about holding your ground as a man who knows his worth and refuses to carry the full weight of something that should be shared. When you do this, you create a mirror. If she is invested, that mirror reflects her effort back, and she steps forward. She realizes that when she gives more, she receives more. The connection begins to flow naturally again, built on reciprocity rather than one-sided sacrifice. But if she isn't truly invested, then her lack of effort becomes painfully obvious. And as hard as that truth may be, it saves you from wasting months or years chasing someone who was never going to meet you where you stand. So here's your challenge. Keep a scorecard for 1 week. Every time she initiates, whether it's a call, a text, or an invitation, you respond with equal effort. Every time she doesn't, you resist the urge to fill in the gap. At the end of the week, review that scorecard with honesty. Ask yourself, is she truly participating in this relationship, or are you the only one holding the line? That answer may sting, but it will give you more clarity than 100 unanswered texts ever could. And here's the viral truth that every man needs to hear. When you stop doing more than she does, you stop being the only one carrying the relationship forward. That shift doesn't just protect your dignity, it forces her to reveal who she really is. And that revelation will change everything. 3. Detach from her replies. Your mood should never rise and fall with the sound of a notification, yet this is where countless men find themselves trapped, living as if their entire emotional stability depends on whether she chooses to reply. If she answers instantly, they feel alive, validated, even triumphant. But if she doesn't respond, the spiral begins: anxiety, overthinking, self-doubt. A single unanswered text becomes a verdict on their worth. You know the cycle. You wake up in the morning and before your feet even touch the floor, your hand reaches for the phone. You scroll through your messages, hoping to see her name, her words, her acknowledgement. But the screen is empty. That silence is not just quiet. It feels like rejection, and it eats at you long before the day even begins. Instead of stepping into the world grounded and focused, you are already off balance because you gave away control of your peace to a device in your hand. The moment your happiness depends on her reply, you have surrendered your power. You are no longer standing firm in who you are. You are chained to her validation. And here is the harsh truth. No woman respects a man who allows his emotions to be controlled by a text message. She doesn't admire your vulnerability. She questions your strength. Because what you think of as caring, she reads as dependency. And dependency, in her eyes, is weakness. That weakness only grows the more you cling to her responses. She senses that your world revolves around her, that your self-worth rises and falls with her attention. And instead of drawing her closer, it pushes her further away. Because deep down, women are drawn not to the man who waits by the phone, but to the man whose life is so full, so grounded, so driven, that a delayed reply doesn't even shake him. This is why you must detach from her replies. Detachment doesn't mean coldness, and it doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means reclaiming your center. It means taking back the energy you've been wasting in waiting and pouring it into building yourself, your body, your work, your vision. You don't sit around refreshing the screen. You're at the gym, sculpting discipline. You don't lose hours wondering why she hasn't written back. You're investing those hours into learning, advancing, and becoming a man she or any woman cannot ignore. And here's the irony. When you stop obsessing over her responses, when you redirect your focus to the life you're building, she starts noticing your absence. Suddenly, the man who once seemed to orbit her disappears into his own gravity. She begins to wonder, why isn't he chasing me anymore? Where did his attention go? Who has it now? That curiosity, born from your silence, is often more powerful than any message you could send. So here is your exercise. Commit to a daily focus ritual. Every morning before you check your phone, invest 30 minutes in yourself. Go for a run, lift weights, journal your thoughts, read something that expands your mind, build a skill that sharpens your future, replace the urge to chase her with the discipline to build yourself. At first, it will feel difficult. The addiction to validation always does. But with each day, you'll notice something shift. Your confidence grows, your presence strengthens, and slowly you begin to realize that her replies never defined you. You were the one giving them that power all along. Detach from her replies, and you will not only regain control of your emotions, you will regain control of your life. And when you do, she will either step closer or fade away. Either way, you win. Because you are no longer a man waiting to be chosen. You are the man who chooses himself. 4. Use absence as leverage. Nobody can miss what never goes away. That's the truth most men forget when they drown a woman in constant messages, calls, and check-ins. If you're always available, always the one to reach out, she never gets the chance to feel your absence. And if she can't feel your absence, she can never truly value your presence. Think about the last time you missed someone. It wasn't because they were standing right in front of you every day. It was because they weren't there. It was the gap, the silence, the empty space they left behind that made you realize how much they mattered. Scarcity has always created value. That's why rare metals are prized, why quiet moments in life feel sacred, why the people who step back are often the ones we long for the most. But when you flood her world with your constant attention, you kill the very thing that creates attraction, longing. Instead of becoming a presence she yearns for, you become background noise she learns to tune out. And that's why you feel invisible. It's not because you lack worth, it's because you've robbed yourself of the most powerful tool in human connection: space. Without space, there is no contrast. Without contrast, there is no desire. This is the mistake men make when they fear stepping back. They believe if they aren't constantly reminding her of their presence, she'll forget them. But the opposite is true. When you never give her silence, you take away the possibility of her ever missing you. She grows accustomed to your effort, and what was once a gift becomes a burden. Every message feels a little heavier, every call feels a little less exciting, because she knows it's always coming. The solution is simple, though not easy. Step back, create silence. Let her wonder why her phone no longer lights up with your name. Let her curiosity build. Let her mind wander. Maybe she starts to ask herself, did he lose interest? Is he seeing someone else? Why isn't he chasing anymore? And in that wondering, she begins to feel something she hasn't in a long time: the tension of missing you. In that gap, one of two things will happen. She will realize your value, step forward and reach out. Or she will remain silent, confirming the truth you've been avoiding. Either way, you win. Because either she shows you she actually cares, or you gain the clarity to stop wasting your time. Silence is not punishment. It's a filter. It separates the ones who truly want you from the ones who never did. So here's your exercise. Practice what I call digital silence. For 3 days in a row, resist the urge to send the first text or make the first call. Use that time differently. Go to the gym and push your limits. Call a friend you've been neglecting. Start a project you've been postponing. Fill the gap with something that makes you stronger, more alive, more complete. While she's wondering why your absence suddenly speaks so loudly, you'll be busy becoming the kind of man whose presence commands respect without ever needing to beg for it. And here's the viral shift every man needs to understand. When you stop flooding her with attention, you don't lose her. You give her the space to either step closer or disappear. Both outcomes serve you. And in both, your absence becomes more powerful than your constant presence ever was. 5. Test her interest the right way. The surest way to know if she cares is not by asking, it's by stepping back. Too many men sabotage themselves because they never test reality. They live trapped in hope, making endless excuses for her lack of effort. She's busy, they say. She's shy. Or the most common excuse, she just doesn't like texting. But you and I both know these aren't explanations. They're rationalizations. They are ways of avoiding the truth you don't want to face. If she truly valued you, she would find a way to show it. Interest never hides forever. This is why you must stop making excuses. Because when you are always the one initiating, she never has to reveal her true feelings. She can sit back, enjoy your attention, and invest nothing in return. To her, your effort is guaranteed, so why bother giving more? You've taken all the risk, all the weight, all the work of maintaining the connection, and that's why you feel stuck. You've been feeding her comfort while starving yourself of clarity. Ask yourself, how many days, weeks, or months have you wasted caught in that fog? Checking your phone, replaying conversations, convincing yourself that her silence has some hidden meaning? The irony is that your persistence doesn't bring her closer. It protects her from ever having to choose. She gets to enjoy the best of both worlds, your consistent effort and her consistent freedom from responsibility, and you get nothing but confusion in return. That's why you must test her interest. Not through games, not through manipulation, simply by stopping what you've always done. Pull back and observe. If she reaches out, If she notices the silence, if she makes an effort to close the gap, then you know she cares at least enough to invest. But if she doesn't, if days turn into silence and she never takes a step toward you, that is your answer. Clear, brutal, freeing. Yes, it may sting. Yes, it may shatter the illusions you've been clinging to, but clarity is better than confusion. Reality is better than illusion. And the truth is, silence doesn't lie. If she values you, she will not allow the silence to stretch on. If she doesn't, then you have your answer, and you've just saved yourself months or years of pouring into someone who was never going to give back. Here's how you put this into practice. Pick 3 patterns you normally initiate. Maybe it's sending the first text in the morning, calling at night to check in, or planning the weekend dates. Stop doing them for 1 week. Not out of anger, not as punishment, but as a test of reality. Journal her response. Did she step forward to fill the silence, or did she let the silence grow? Did she contribute to the connection, or did she disappear into it? Don't judge based on what you hope to see. Judge based on what actually happens. Her actions are the truth. Your hopes are not. When you commit to this, something powerful happens. You stop begging for clarity and you start living in it. You stop investing in illusions and you start investing in yourself. And here's the viral shift that flips the dynamic completely. By testing her interest, you force her to reveal who she really is, without you saying a single word. And once you know the truth, you can move forward with strength, dignity, and peace. 6. Raise your standards. The real issue isn't her silence, it's the standards you've accepted. Too many men stay trapped in relationships where they beg for scraps of attention and convince themselves it's love. They cling to the smallest gestures, a single reply after days of silence, a quick check-in after long stretches of neglect, and they tell themselves it means she cares. But deep down, they know the truth. They're surviving on crumbs and calling it a meal. If she can go days without checking in, if she can ignore your consistent efforts while you still chase her, then the problem is no longer her indifference, it's your tolerance. Every time you accept the bare minimum, you are silently teaching yourself that it's all you deserve. And that's why you feel smaller, weaker, unworthy. You start bending your own expectations lower and lower until you barely recognize yourself. Instead of living as a man of value, you exist as a man waiting for validation, hoping that one day she'll give more than the nothing she's been giving. And here's the brutal reality. The longer you tolerate neglect, the more you destroy your own self-respect. You think you're being patient, you think you're being loyal, but patience is not supposed to mean self-abandonment. Loyalty is not supposed to mean suffering in silence while she puts in no effort. That is not love, that is betrayal, not from her, but from yourself to yourself. Because every time you accept neglect as normal, you erode the foundation of your confidence, your masculinity, and your self-worth. The answer is simple, though not easy. You must raise your standards. You must decide with conviction that you will only invest in relationships where effort flows both ways. This doesn't mean demanding perfection. It doesn't mean expecting constant attention. It means expecting reciprocity, expecting that the connection is carried by 2 people, not one man who does all the chasing while the other grows comfortable in silence. And when you raise your standards, something remarkable happens. 2 things, in fact. First, women respect you more. A man who holds the line on what he will and won't accept radiates strength. He communicates, without saying a word, that he knows his value, and that respect for himself comes before his desire for validation. That kind of energy is magnetic. And second, the wrong women filter themselves out. The ones who only wanted you for comfort, the ones who never intended to invest, the ones who were content with giving you the bare minimum, they fall away. And that is not a loss, that is freedom. Here's your exercise. Write a list of 3 non-negotiables in a relationship: effort, consistency, and respect. Place it somewhere you see every day. Any woman who fails to meet those standards is automatically filtered out. This isn't arrogance. This isn't pride. This is self-respect. It is you declaring that you will not live in scarcity, begging for attention, when what you deserve is partnership built on reciprocity. And here's the viral truth that men need to hear. The moment you raise your standards, the game changes. You stop chasing the wrong women and you start attracting the right ones. You stop losing yourself in silence and you start living in strength. Raise your standards and watch how quickly the wrong people disappear and how naturally the right ones show up. 7. The win-win reality. Here's the truth most men miss. When you stop chasing, you never lose. For years you've been conditioned to believe that if you pull back, you risk losing her. That if you don't keep pushing, calling, texting, reminding her of your presence, she'll forget you. And that fear keeps you trapped in a cycle of one-sided effort. You cling to the connection, hoping that your persistence will make her stay. But all it really does is rob you of your power and feed the illusion that her attention is the only prize worth winning. The reality is very different. By pulling back, you don't risk losing. You gain clarity. You create the conditions where the truth has no choice but to reveal itself. If she truly values you, she will not let your silence last forever. She will step forward, call, text, check in, and make an effort to show you that she cares. And if she doesn't, if she allows the silence to stretch on without lifting a finger, then you see the truth faster. You learn exactly where you stand. That's not a loss. It's a win, because clarity always beats confusion. Think about what life feels like when you're caught in the cycle of chasing. Every day you're asking questions in your own head. Why hasn't she responded? Did I say something wrong? Is she losing interest? That constant questioning eats away at you. It drains your energy, your confidence, your sense of direction. You're not living, you're waiting. And the longer you wait, the weaker you feel. But when you step back, when you allow silence to do the work for you, those questions stop mattering. Because you stop searching for validation and start observing reality. This is the win-win reality. If she responds to your absence, you win, because the relationship becomes more balanced. You no longer have to carry all the weight. You've proven that she is willing to invest too. If she doesn't respond, you also win, because you've saved yourself from months, maybe even years, of one-sided effort. You've spared yourself the slow erosion of dignity that comes from begging for attention. Either way, you stop losing. The shift here isn't just tactical, it's philosophical. A Stoic doesn't measure his worth by someone else's silence. He doesn't tie his happiness to whether or not another person chooses to reach out. He measures his worth by the standards he holds for himself and by the peace he refuses to sacrifice for illusions. And once you step into that frame of mind, you'll realize the irony. The moment you no longer fear losing her is the moment you put yourself in a position where you cannot lose. So here's your exercise. Every time you feel the urge to chase, remind yourself of this principle. Either she steps up or I step forward without her. Write it down. Repeat it out loud. Let it become a filter through which you see every interaction. Then spend that energy you would have wasted waiting for her reply on something that moves your life forward. Read a book that sharpens your thinking. Take on a challenge that builds your body. Start a project that excites you. Fill the silence with progress, not anxiety. And here's the viral shift that every man must understand. You don't need her to validate your worth. If she comes closer, it's because she sees the strength of a man who doesn't beg. If she doesn't, it's because she was never meant to stay. In both cases, you win, because you're no longer the man who waits in limbo. You're the man who moves forward in clarity, dignity, and strength. This is the win-win reality. You can't lose what was never truly yours, and you can't miss out when you choose yourself first. A Stoic never begs for what isn't given freely. He does not chase affection that must be forced, nor does he tie his peace to another person's silence, because peace is not a gift someone else can hand you. It is a discipline you build for yourself. If she never calls or texts you first, the path is clear. Stop rewarding her silence, match her energy, detach from her replies, use absence as leverage, test her interest, raise your standards, and step into the win-win reality. Every man who has ever lost himself in chasing knows the emptiness it creates, the endless waiting, the doubts that eat away at your confidence, the quiet surrender of self-respect. But the moment you break that cycle, the moment you stop running after someone who doesn't meet you halfway, everything changes. You reclaim your strength, you reclaim your clarity, and more than that, you reclaim your time, the one resource you can never earn back. Because here is the paradox that few men realize. The moment you stop chasing, you stop losing. The neediness fades, the anxiety dissolves, and what remains is dignity. And a man who refuses to lose himself can never truly lose. If she steps closer, it's because she feels the weight of your absence. If she walks away, you've filtered out someone who was never yours. Either way, you win. And the man who stops losing, the man who holds his ground with calm strength, always wins. If this message gave you clarity, don't just leave in silence, act. Hit that like button so this truth reaches more men walking the same path. Subscribe to Stoic Station, your home for strength, stillness, and self-mastery. And in the comments, share your truth. Write one line: "My presence has value." Because the moment you claim it, you stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. Stay disciplined, stay unshakable. This is Stoic Station.